I literally clocked in my shift as a nurse and I left the shift as a patient. I was physically assaulted it was at hospital. I'm not going to say the specifics. Me as a night shift nurse trying to bathe my patient. So, some patients you can tell nobody's giving him a bath in 2 days. I'm trying to be super nurse. I'm trying to be good to you. Granted, it's neuro. Like, I know who I'm dealing with my type of specialty. I grabbed the CNA. Hey, let's turn him. He wasn't 4-point restraints, to be fair. We didn't let him free. We just loosened it just so we can get him to turn so we can clean his back. And he literally went crazy on me. And I think outside of the patient, because he was sick and you can say whatever, it was like the lack of support that the hospital gave. It was kind of like, I was on workers' comp. So, they did pay for 2 weeks while I was healing. It was a full thing. Like I had to see multiple doctors. I was on bed rest. I was hemorrhaging. Like it wasn't a casual situation. And so, it's like they threw the workers' comp at me. Okay, here's 2 weeks, whatever. And it was still like during my healing process, it was still very much like, are you coming next week? Or it wasn't like concern. It was just kind of like, we need to fill up staff. You're more than a nurse. You have more to offer the world than just, your patient, giving them meds and helping them. You can contribute to the world on a bigger scale outside of just in the hospital. This was April of 2022. I made $30,000 in 10 days. And I got pay stubs, like all $30,000 on a 10-day strike.
Imagine being a nurse and getting attacked by a patient to the point where you come into the hospital as an employee and leave as a patient. The injury leaves you disabled for months with an inability to work. What would you do? How would you support yourself or your family? In this episode, I'm going to be speaking with a nurse who was not left with many options after she encountered this very scenario. She had several travel assignments as an ICU nurse until this event happened. And after months of recovery, she hopped back into the scene as a strike nurse who made $30,000 in 10 days. She used this experience to educate other nurses of the ins and outs of travel, strike, and PRN nursing. She also built a community dedicated to nurses who are seeking financial independence. We're going to talk with her about her journey to financial freedom in this episode. So, with that said, Lois, tell us where you're from and why you decided to become a nurse.
Hi, Jason. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me on here. So a little bit about myself. I've been a nurse now for over 5 years. And what really drew me into nursing is because my mom, she's actually a nurse practitioner. She is my role model. So I just kind of like follow her steps. So, she's been a nurse for years and she loves it. And so it was kind of always something that I knew that I would do. She's kind of my role model. So I just followed her steps.
So where did you grow up?
So I was born and raised in Accra, Ghana. So I moved to America when I was 9 years old. So in 2006, actually on my birthday, I'm a Cancer. So July 21st, 2006, we relocated to the United States. And so that's where I grew up. I grew up with my grandma, my mom, my dad. And my dad is like, he's a genius. He's like the smartest person I've ever met. So he had a huge job opportunity in the United States in Florida. At that time, he was a chemical engineer. So we ended up relocating because of his big job. And, we just never went back. So
you guys moved to Florida when you first came to the US?
Correct. Yeah, we moved to Jacksonville, Florida. And that's where I went to like middle school, high school, college, and then after college, I relocated to New Orleans, Louisiana. I wanted a little bit more excitement in my nursing career. Jacksonville, Florida is not really like, it's getting busier, but I wasn't seeing a lot of crazy patients or not saying like I want to see crazy patients, but I wanted to learn. I'm very big on like getting a lot out of my shifts. And so it was kind of like a bunch of casual stuff. So I decided to move into New Orleans because I knew it would be a bigger and busier city. I'm also an ICU nurse, so I knew like I needed to get as much critical care, actual critical care, because not all ICUs are built the same. So I was like, I need like actual critical care. My dream at the time was to be a CRNA. Now that's not a thing for me, but at the time I was like, I need the best ICU. So I moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, and then I started travel nursing. My first assignment was New York COVID.
Awesome. So you mentioned that your mom was or is actually a nurse. Did she get her nursing license in Ghana?
That's a great question. She actually got it here in the United States. So when she was
Mm.
in Ghana, one thing that most people don't know, I would assume, is that like nursing really only pays this well in the United States. Like everywhere else,
Mhm.
it's not really looked at as like, oh, you're a nurse. Oh, wow. So nurses in Ghana don't make any money. Like it's not even like a flex, if you will, to say you're a nurse, how it is here. I have family and friends in the UK that are nurses. It's just not the same. So when she was in Ghana, she was working at the bank. A lot of people in Africa, especially in Ghana to be more specific, banking is a flex. So, when she came here, she was like, oh, like her education in Ghana would have been equivalent to maybe like 30, 40K here in the bank. So she decided to switch careers and pursue nursing. My grandma was also a nurse. So I think deep down, my mom always wanted to be one, but the money wasn't making sense over there. So when we came, she kind of just started over.
That's awesome. Do you know Nanelle Griselda? She's also from Ghana. She lives in the UK. She's a nurse in the UK.
No, I don't know her.
She has a
I gotta
YouTube
meet her.
channel. Yeah, she has a YouTube channel and she's got like over 156,000 subscribers right now.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow. I gotta
she's
meet her.
amazing. Yeah, she
That's
makes more
awesome.
money from her YouTube channel than she does from her work as a nurse in the UK.
I
Because
believe it.
yeah, like you mentioned, this is the only country that pays nurses so well. In the UK, she's making like maybe $36,000 a year, 36,000 to 40,000. Meanwhile, she's making like 9,000 to $12,000 a month from YouTube.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah,
Huge difference. Huge
yeah, it's a
difference.
huge difference. So at what age did you enroll in nursing school?
So I was in nursing school. I was 19. So
Mm,
I went to a community college or a state college. I kind of took the fast track. My program was 16 months. So I was able to become a nurse within 3 years. So my birthday's in July and I graduated nursing school in August. If my birthday was in August, I would have been 20 at graduation. So I was like
wow.
freshly 21. And I used to really kind of like be sad about that because I always had the grades. I had a 3.9 GPA. I'm
Mm,
African, so like getting C's and D's is not an option in my household. That was never an option.
yeah.
So I always had the grades and I got into the big schools. I got into, UCF, UF in Gainesville, which is the top school in Florida, but. We didn't have the money.
Mm,
My mom, when we first moved here, we had to get our citizenship. We like at first we had green card, then we had to move into citizenship. So it's like I couldn't afford like a fancy school and I had the grades for it. So I remember when we were graduating high school, I used to feel so like less than. All my peers were going to Miami, they were going to have fun and they were joining fraternities and sororities. And it's like I had to go to a community college and I had to work at a grocery store. I was working at a grocery store called Publix. So we didn't have the money at that time to, for me to have that college experience. And so I worked throughout school. I was living with my parents throughout school. And now that I'm older and more mature, I'm glad everything worked out how it did because I don't owe anybody any money. I don't have student loans. I got done in 3 years. So if there's anybody watching this, like, do not feel less than your peers because you have an ADN. I literally used to feel less than a nurse because I didn't have the fancy BSN. But now that I'm older, 5 years
mhm,
later, it's like my peers are still paying student loans. They're
yeah.
still waiting on Biden to do whatever, and it's just like I don't have to worry about that. I don't owe anybody. I can do whatever I want. So, and the beautiful thing I love about nursing is at the end of the day, we all have to sit down and take NCLEX. So at the end of the day,
Mm,
whether you went to, you got a 4 year degree or you went to state college, all these hospitals want to know for the most part. I mean, you got those hospitals that want the magnet, that want the BSN for the magnet. But at the end of the day, it's like, did you pass NCLEX or not? So I just want to encourage, and I feel like there's not enough people on Instagram encouraging ADN nurses. Not everybody has the 100K ready to go for a fancy school. Just, save your money, stay with mom, stay with dad. If you have to work through school, do that. Do what you have to do. Stay focused. I was focused my entire 3 years. I watched some of my friends go live it up, go party in Miami. And now, they're working at whatever job that's not their ideal job. So
mm,
just stay down. I stayed down. We didn't have the money, but I got the money now. I got the money now
mm,
and I don't owe nobody. So
yeah.
just stay down. Absolutely.
You know, I 100% agree with you. I had a conversation with Tasha. She's one of the nurses I interviewed previously. She currently owns a med spa business, and she made like the first time or the first year she opened her business, she made $360,000 in the first year. This was actually even before the year was up, right? And she actually started as an ADN nurse. Then she worked in hospice, she worked in informatics, and while she was working, she got her employer to pay for her BSN, and now she's working at one of the highest paying hospitals 20 hours a week while she owns her med spa. So in addition to, you know, working at the med spa, making like $360,000 per year, she's making like an additional $150,000 per year at her current job. And she did all of that with her ADN initially. And when I was in school, I remember I was going to school. I was in a community college and I tried to get into the ADN program, but it was so competitive. And that's one thing about like
It
ADN
was
programs. Like,
competitive.
yeah, they're extremely competitive. So I, at that point, had no choice but to apply outside of my school. And I ended up getting into a private university, which was a 4-year program. But
Nice.
I already had like basic, technically like an associate's degree in liberal arts. So I just transferred all my credits to that university and I ended up getting a BSN within like a year and a half or so. But what I always tell people now is that if you can get an ADN, get it. That is the cheapest way to become a nurse. It's the fastest, it's the cheapest. And I work with nurses. The hospital system I work in, they pay ADN nurses the exact same that they pay the BSN nurses. Like there's no differential in our hospital system for degrees. So even if you have an MSN or you're an NP working in an inpatient unit, you still get the same pay because we're a union hospital as the nurses that have an ADN. So just get your ADN and then have your hospital pay for your BSN once you're working.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I've done 13 travel assignments and I've worked in magnet hospitals as a
Yeah.
travel nurse with an ADN and I've never had an issue. Literally never. 13 different
Yep.
assignments. I'm not talking extensions, like
Yes.
13 different hospitals and it's never been an issue. I'm not saying that's going to be the case forever or maybe your dream hospital they might be more picky, but for the most part, like it's short staff. Like I feel like nobody can really be that picky anymore. It's like we just
Yeah,
need nurses.
absolutely. And you know, the one thing that scared me a lot though when I was in nursing school, which pushed me to get my BSN, is that everybody kept saying, oh, it's going to be mandatory to have your BSN. No hospital is going to hire you without a BSN. That is a complete lie. You
It's
are
a
going to be
lie.
hired with your ADN. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. You will get a job.
Yeah. So you graduated with your ADN, and then what did you do once you graduated?
Absolutely. So I graduated with my ADN and then I immediately, like, I graduated in August. I started my BSN program in December. So I took a couple months off and I had my job, my hospital at the time pay for my BSN. I was working in Jacksonville, Florida, which is my hometown. I was working there for a couple months. My dream, like, even before I even got into nursing school, I was telling everybody, I'm going to be the youngest CRNA to exist. I'm going to be a CRNA. I'm going to be a CRNA. And so 5 years ago in 2018, hospitals weren't as open to letting new nurses in the ICU. And so my first job, and I had that job lined up before I even passed NCLEX, I told them I want to be an ICU nurse. They were like, just give us 6 months in the PCU, and then after 6 months, we'll put you in the ICU. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll take what I can get. And so I was working that job for probably about 4 months, probably like 3 months. And then I told them, hey, like, what type of ICU do you have open? Am I going to be neuro? Am I going to do MICU, CVICU? What type of, because at this point we're like halfway through and, my 6 months is coming up. And they played with me, Jason. They were like, oh, I know we told you that, but we actually have a job fair and we want to hire experienced nurses in the
Wow.
ICU. Like, I
Wow.
feel like that's a scam. Like, you
Yeah.
scammed me. I only took, so that's kind of what forced me to relocate to
Mm.
New Orleans, Louisiana. And I always tell people, like, whatever you want to do, no excuses. If you're watching
Yeah.
this, I don't give myself excuses. I don't sit there and cry about stuff. I just think, okay, what's next? So you guys told me 6 months, then I see you now. It's a different story. Instead of me crying about it, I'm just going to go online and see what else is out there. And so I didn't want to move. I didn't know anybody in New Orleans. I had never even visited that city. Didn't know a soul, no friend, no family. But I knew like I wanted to be a CRNA, and that requires ICU experience. So literally packed my bags, accepted the job offer, moved to a city that I didn't know anybody, all by myself. That was my first time adulting, first time having an apartment. I didn't have much money. Like I went out there like probably maybe like $1,200. And I lived in that apartment with no furniture for like 3 months because it was, I mean, it's like I had a mattress, but I was really just surviving. But I had what I wanted. I had my ICU job. I was like getting the hang of it. And so, yeah, I always tell people no excuses. Like you got to do what you got to do, period.
Yeah. So how much did they start you off in that first job in the PICU or at PCU?
My PCU job, I remember it in Jacksonville, Florida. It was $23.50. This is in
Mm,
2018. They started me at
yeah.
$23.50.
That just
Crazy.
seems like the average. That's typically what all nurses get paid as new grads in Florida.
Absolutely. And I was, the crazy part is I was
Mm.
excited about it. I thought it was good money. At that time, my
Yeah.
only nursing is only my second job. So I was
Mhm.
working, well, it's technically my third. My first job, I was at a grocery store, Publix, for about 4 years. Like I'm a
Wow.
cancer, so we're naturally loyal. I loved that
Yeah.
job. And
Mm,
so, I was making probably like $10. So to me, that was like, and I was younger. I was just turned
yeah.
21. So I was like, oh, now it's like, I would never, never.
Yeah. That's an insult now, right?
Crazy, crazy.
Yeah. So when you moved to New Orleans, how much were you making there?
I was making, I was under 30. I think I was making probably like 28, probably
Okay.
like 28. And that was only really because that was also night shift. They had like a $3
Wow.
night shift. So if it wasn't night shift, I would have made probably like 25 instead of the 23. But I just know I was like right under 30. So I was probably making like 28.50 or like right at 29.
And how did you get that job? Was it like a job board? Did you know somebody who worked in the hospital? Like how did that happen?
Yeah, great question. I went online and it was kind of random. I just went online and I was looking, I don't know if it was Indeed. I don't think it was Indeed, but I think I just Googled like, ICU jobs in the area. So at first I was looking within Florida, like, okay, maybe Jacksonville's telling me no, but maybe Orlando, Miami, same thing. They were being super, super picky about new grads in the ICU, which I understand. And so I was like, wow, Lois, are you really willing to move states? Like, is it that serious? And then I was like, it actually is that serious. So I started looking in Texas, actually. I had two job offers. I had a job offer in New Orleans and I had a job offer in Houston, Texas. And so, but the New Orleans job, like, it, I should have knew it was a red flag. They were overly nice and sweet to me. Like they like booked me like a 3-day flight and
What?
hotel. Every They gave me the full red carpet. They were like, "We're gonna fly you in for the interview. We want to interview you in person." They paid for my hotel. They paid for my flight. They paid for my rental car. They paid for meals. So I was like, the Houston hospital didn't do all that for a new grad. So I was like sold on the New Orleans offer. I was like, oh, this means they have money. No, this means it's a terrible hospital. And they locked me in on a 2-year contract. I had just never
Wow.
experienced such red carpet treatment. To me, I was like, oh, this hospital is great. And it was actually a red flag because that hospital, I'm not going to say the name, but it was absolutely
Yeah.
terrible. Would not recommend.
All right.
No,
Note to self, if an employer treats you like a celebrity before you're hired, do not accept the job.
red flag. And
Yeah.
that's sad because that should be a green flag, but it was, oh my God. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God. When I signed the contract, I was excited. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to find an apartment out here. My life is getting better. And yeah, when I started working, like literally no staff. I'm not even being funny, Jason. Like before I was a travel nurse, I didn't know that like nurses get assistance. Like I didn't even know what phlebotomy was. Like I only drew my own blood. I was like picking up trash. Like I was all I knew, my standard as a nurse was to do everything. And so when I went to my first travel assignment, this was April of 2020, New York City, even though the situation at the time was terrible, I had never seen sicker patients like that. However, I was like, wow, we get phlebotomy? Like, I don't have to do this. I don't have to, like, resources. So yeah, that New Orleans hospital, even though it wasn't a great hospital, it did prepare me for my first travel and nurse assignment.
All right. So two things. What unit were you working in the New Orleans hospital? And then we'll talk about New York. So tell me that first.
Yeah, so they gave me the neuro ICU, which surprisingly, I thought I wasn't gonna like it because I feel like everyone hates neuro. So I was like I kind of knew they were gonna give me neuro, but I ended up really
Yeah.
loving it. The thing about neuro is it's pretty much the same type of stuff you're gonna see. It's either a stroke, some type of brain aneurysm, a seizure, a bleed. It could only be like five things.
Yeah.
So, whereas like MICU or SICU, you can get any type of surgery, any type of medical stuff. Like neuro is straight up neuro. So, it's a little hard in the beginning, but once you get it down packed, like you are an expert. It can only be like five diagnoses. So I grew to really like it.
That's cool. Okay. So then after you left that place, did you work there for 2 years?
I worked there for a year and a half. So I actually worked there for like a little bit under a year and a half. I had probably like 4 months or 3 months from my PCU job, and then I had like a year and some change from New Orleans. So before, when I went into travel nursing, I had a total of a year and a half of experience, but probably like a year of solid, a year, because my assignment was April. So probably like a year and like 2 or 3 months of ICU experience. So I was nervous going into it because, everyone says you got to have 2 years. And I knew like I only had a total of a year and a half. So I really didn't even think I was going to get the job. And I was going to say God was so good. He's always good. And I got the New York City job.
I see. So I thought you mentioned that there was some sort of contract that you signed with the New Orleans hospital for 2 years. So how did
Yes.
that work?
Oh my God, that's a great question. So I broke the contract and I was literally terrified. I was like, oh God. Because what happens whenever, for you guys who are not super familiar, whenever you're signing a contract with it's like a residency program, for lack of better terms. That's what they used to call it. So you're pretty much telling them that, hey, like, you're going to work here for 2 years. Now, they told us when we were first starting, they told us if you break this contract, you're going to have to pay them back, because I got a $10,000 sign-on bonus. So like everything looked perfect about this job. I was like, oh my
Oh
God, they
yeah.
flew me in, giving me 10K, like literally. And they paid the 10K on like the first check. It was crazy. I was like, wow,
Wow.
I love it here. And so I knew going into it, they said that if you canceled your contract, like if you quit before your first year, you have to pay the full $10,000 back. If you do 1 year, you have to pay the 5K back. So I was going into New York knowing that I would have to just pay, like I had did at least a year with them. So I knew I was gonna like owe the 5,000. I mean, I wasn't calling HR to follow up on the 5,000. They weren't calling me. So I was like, oh, maybe they forgot. It was 2020. A lot was happening. I was like, oh, they
Yeah.
probably forgot. They did not forget. They called me. They hunted me down. And so I ended up having to pay that 5K. But that was like probably like week 12 of my New York assignment. So I was already making like 6K a week. So it was just kind of like,
Wow.
here you go. But
All
yeah, I
right.
did
Here's
have
the
to pay.
thing. Here's the thing you need to understand. An employer will never contact you if they underpay you, but if they overpay you, they will be on you for life.
They were on me. And
Yeah.
I think April of 2020 was so hectic. They didn't call me until like the very end. So it was probably like, I want to say like July is when they called me. I was like, oh my God, nobody was calling me. I wasn't calling them. And then they started blowing me up. And I got scared. I was like, am I going to go to jail? Let me just give them the 5K.
Okay,
I don't
so
want to get
how did
sued.
you get into travel nursing then?
Yeah, so it was actually nothing but God. Whenever I tell this story, it's crazy. I made a post on Instagram. So everyone needs to make social media their best friend. Like social media is everything. And so I made a post. I was in my PPE. It was nothing crazy. I was at the nurses station in New Orleans at my assignment, my staff job at the time. And so I posted, it was actually March 16th to be exact. I made a post. It was like a long paragraph, and I don't even do paragraphs. And I was just saying how, like, wow, like I've never seen so many sick patients. Like, it was crazy, and really just warning the public to really take this seriously. Like, I'm a nurse, I'm in it, and because at that time people were partying, and it was just like, so I made like a call to action post. I mean, I didn't even have 10K followers. I wanted everybody to know that this is real, this is serious. And so a recruiter, that post got reposted on Facebook pages, like big, huge nurse pages, because it was like me and my PPE and then a long paragraph. It was very touching. I was crying as I was typing the caption. And so people were reposting it out of nowhere. This is somebody, I don't even think I had like 6K followers. Like, I just like started seeing my stuff everywhere. And I was talking about, how like bad it is. Like, the patients are super sick and everybody should stay safe. And a travel nurse recruiter saw my post. I think she saw it on a Facebook nurse page, and she reached out to me. She was like, have you ever thought about travel nursing? And I was like, yeah, but I only have a year and a half of experience. I used to think that 2-year thing was very strict. I didn't know you can kind of get away with it with 1 year. So I was like, yeah, I would love to, but I don't have I don't have 2 years. And she was like, how much experience do you have? And I was like, about a year and a half. And she literally like took my information. We jumped on a phone call, and literally she was like, because my post was March 16th. I signed my contract probably like the next week after. And yeah, and I was at a really good hospital too. So like, a lot of people, when they're talking about their New York experience, it was so horrible and oh my God. And not to say that I chilled, but I was at the #1 hospital in the entire state.
NYP?
Yes, NYP.
I worked at NYP. It was not the #1 hospital.
In New
Okay,
York
which
State.
NYP?
I was at Columbia University.
That's where I worked.
I love that hospital. They said that
Oh
they were
my
number
God.
one in 2020. They were #1 in New York State, and they were like #5 in the country.
Listen, I know that, okay? I used to tell everybody this when I worked in New York. But let me tell you something about NYP. The reason they're #1 is because of their doctors, okay? They hire the highest caliber doctors. Like, they're renowned. They're renowned all over the world. That's why they're #1 in New York State and #5 in the entire country. But if you would have gone to the ER, you would see that patients are waiting there 8, 10, 12 hours just to be seen.
And you know what? Something about them gave me a red flag. Not in 2020. I was living the dream, but like a bunch of NYP nurses went on strike earlier this year, and I was like, not NYP. Like, I love it there. So it must not be that great.
No, because the ICU, so I don't know how it was during COVID, but if it's not during COVID, you do have your ratios. It's like 1 to
Right.
2 max. But in the ER, there were no ratios. Like, I would get 17 patients at times. Like, I just spoke with a coworker of mine like 2 years ago, and she told me she had 40 patients to herself.
Are you
Okay.
kidding?
Yes. Okay. So that's just how the
Crazy.
ER was. And then the inpatient units, excluding the ICU, were not that great either because the nurses hate working there as well. The ratios aren't that good either. But
Isn't it sad how like one unit can have a
yeah.
completely different experience than?
I
Because
will
to me,
say this
NYP
though.
is like, go ahead, sorry.
No, I will say this, that I had like the best experience there because of the people that I worked with. It's
Yeah.
unlike any other place that I've ever worked at till this day. Like, a few of my coworkers from NYP are working with me here in California now. So like, you make these really lifelong relationships with people. And the cool thing is that that hospital is located in an area where you can go out and have dinner or breakfast with your coworkers after
Yes.
work. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
That's crazy. You were at Columbia. I love that area. Washington Heights. Like
It is.
I
It's a
would.
great area.
It's great. I loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in a
It's
great location. It's funny because a lot of the times when I speak with nurses that have worked for NYP, it's usually like Cornell because, Cornell is like the top, really considered the
yeah.
top NYP hospital. But
I hear they're
Columbia
very
is,
strict there.
they are. And they're not union. They don't have a union. It's a private institution.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know
It's
that.
only Well, basically every other hospital that's an NYP hospital besides Cornell is a union represented hospital. So yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. But
Interesting.
yeah. But how long did you work there for then?
My contract was for 13 weeks. So my start date was April 20th, 2020. And I probably ended like right before my birthday, probably like 2 weeks before my birthday. And then, so yeah, I was there for 13 weeks. I loved it because at that time, New York was shut down. So like I didn't deal with the traffic and like the homeless. Everyone was locked up. I mean, not locked up, but locked up in the house.
Yeah.
And
That's why you loved it so much.
I
Okay.
loved it. There was nobody on the subway. I was taking the subway
Mm.
to and from work. It'd be like two people. This was like, like around one COVID. It was a beautiful time in New York, man. I loved it. And so now when I go back, or now when I tell nurses, like, I love New York, they're like, what? You love New York nursing? I'm like, yes, it was the best. They're like, no.
Well, then I guess you should tell nurses who are ICU nurses to go to NYP because
Yes.
otherwise they're not going to enjoy it.
That's good to know. Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
telling everyone, oh my God, go to NYP. So there might be some ED nurses who probably hate me.
Okay, so how much were you getting paid as a traveler in that position? You said about 5,000 a week?
I was making right under 6,000, probably like
Mm.
58 or 5,900 a week.
And for how
And
many hours of work?
I was doing 48 hours.
I see. Okay, wow,
Yeah.
that's not bad. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, I thought it was great because at that time there was a travel agency that was super popular called Crucial. And so a
Yeah,
lot of nurses were in New York, but they were doing 21 days straight. I'm like,
yeah,
listen, I don't care. I know they were paying $10,000 a week, but it's like
yeah.
I've always been very big about my time. And that's one thing that I teach nurses and my mentees now is that like from the beginning, you can't get me to work 21 days straight as a nurse. I don't care how much money's on the table. That is absolutely crazy. And so, shout out to all the ones that did it, but you got to work smart, not hard. And so, yeah, I was doing 48 hours, and I don't know if it was the adrenaline. It didn't feel that miserable at that time.
It's funny because you say that. I don't think you know about the nurses that I work with because in our hospital system, these nurses are working 30, 40, 50, 60 days in a row. Yeah. And then
What?
one of them works 365 days a year. Yeah.
You're
I'm
kidding.
not
You're
kidding.
kidding.
I'm not kidding. I'm
Who
not.
who
And
would
it's
do that? Like,
Yeah,
why?
well, here's the thing. Our hospital system has great benefits for nurses who want to pick up extra shifts. So they have this thing called 6-day premium. So on the sixth day, you get paid time and a half, regardless of how many hours you worked before. So like you could have worked 4 hours per day every day of the week until the sixth day. And then you work the sixth day, you get time and a half. The seventh day, you get double time. And then every day after
Oh,
that, you get time and a half until you stop working. And
oh,
also,
got you.
yeah. And also every seventh consecutive day, if you continue working, you get paid double time on the seventh consecutive day. So yeah,
That's
that's
nice.
why. And then you don't have to work 12 hours. You don't have to work 8 hours. You could just work 4 hours on your days off.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's still crazy though.
It
It's
is
still
pretty crazy.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is. Like the most that I worked was 18 days in a row, I believe. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
crazy.
But so
Crazy.
I was only working like 24 hours a week, normally like 8 hour
Hmm.
shifts, but I was coming in for 4 hours on my days off. So
Got you.
it's technically not that
That's
much, but yeah, I mean, I hate it because I'm still away from my family,
right.
and I don't like that feeling. So now I'm only working 20 hours a week. I have
I
nine
love
days off
that.
every other week, so I get a lot of time off. Yeah.
That's nice. I love that for you. I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So you worked there. How was the pandemic though, while you were working there? Because you got there at the beginning of the pandemic.
At the
This is
beginning.
like, yeah. So how was
It
that?
was it was absolutely crazy.
Mhm.
And this is coming from somebody who I take risks. I moved to
Yeah.
random states. I don't know. Like I thought I was gonna be able to handle it. And I actually thought, before I actually went out to New York, I was watching the news. I'm like, they have to be being a little dramatic. Like, it can't be this bad. Cause they were like, oh, like the morgues are full and patients are in trucks. And I was like, they're probably being a little dramatic. When I got there, I was like, no freaking way. It felt like I was in a movie. It felt like I was literally in a movie, especially in the ICU. The hospital at the time was, some units were doing team nursing, some units were doing regular, like you get your patient. And so like every traveler at that point was float pool. Like I was floating everywhere. They were throwing me in the ED, throwing me in the OR. I was just like, oh my God. And it was really, really crazy. It was the first time as a nurse outside of like being a fresh new grad. It was my first time as a nurse that I left my shifts crying, like legit tears. I was crying literally after every shift. And I'm really, even though I'm a Cancer, I'm like almost a Leo. So like the next day is like, or 2 days later is a Leo. So I'm not really a crier. I probably cry like 3 times a year. Not that I'm some, hard person, but it takes a lot for me to really like feel like deeply. And so I was literally crying after every single shift. It was so bad. And I was getting like super attached to the patients because at that time there was no family. And this was New York. So like I would leave work. I was working night shift. I would leave work and like people's families, people's wives, people's husbands, people's daughters and kids were outside with pictures of their patients. Like, have you seen my dad? I thought it was in a movie. Do you have my dad? Or you're a nurse? I'm like, oh my God. People were literally, because they couldn't come in. We weren't doing any visitors. And so sometimes, especially when I was down in the ED downstairs, people would literally be like right on the window trying to peek, it was honestly crazy. And so I just saw so much. I actually begged my mom. My mom is a psych NP, and she had just finished NP school. She was excited to go on her NP journey. And I was like, I know you're like done with RN life, but I need you to please take this assignment with me. So probably about a month into my assignment, my mom, she took her first travel assignment. She came out to New York. She was in Brooklyn though, but it was nice to like have my support system. So it was crazy.
Well, to have your mother, just be there by your side, that's amazing. Like, not many
It was.
people have that.
It was. She's literally my rock. And my mom is like, she's cool. Like she's African. Obviously, both my parents were all African, but my mom has Americanized a lot. A lot of her friends are like healthcare professionals. And so she's like a cool mom. Like, I still respect her and I still like I'm scared of her. But she's cool. Like, when she came, her hospital was in Brooklyn. She was having a completely different experience than I was, but it was nice to like, oh, she's like 10 minutes away, not obviously by train, but at that time there was no traffic. So like we were in hotels. Also, another thing during that time is we were actual heroes. Now we're like back to normal. I mean, I think nurses are still heroes, but at that time, that was the time when you were going to work, they were like clapping for you. Like, I don't know if you remember, they would like clap. I was
Yeah.
like, royalty. So, it was a great experience. And we also got free hotel at that
Wow.
time. That was the time where, the governor at the time, he was very big on nurses or healthcare workers in general. It didn't matter if you were CNA or whoever. New York was very big on healthcare workers not going back home after their shift. So I was literally in New York for free. Like my hotel was absolutely free. They had a program where every 30 days you were in a hotel. So I was in Times Square at a Marriott for free. So I mean, everything outside of the tragedy, it was a great experience.
This is why you loved NYP so much.
I had a great time, honestly.
Let me tell you something. If they would have been paying for me to stay at the Marriott while I was working there, I would have never left.
I loved it so much. Like I literally, and the doctors, maybe because I'm also like from the South, like Florida and New Orleans. Like you mentioned earlier, the doctors at NYP were great. They like you guys were spoiled, man. I had never, as a nurse, you get an iPhone to like page. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
To me, it felt like futuristic. And the doctors actually responded in the chat. They actually did rounds. Yeah, free hotel, and NYP had meals. So we got free breakfast. Free breakfast and free like lunch. I always ate for free. It was
you're gonna make everybody think it's always like this at NYP.
They should cut me a check after this.
Yeah, they should. Okay, I gotta do a PSA, guys. It's not always like this at NYP. It was only like that during the pandemic.
Let's
Okay,
clarify.
so what did you do after your contract was over?
So after my contract was over, I kept travel nursing. So when I took that New York assignment, I actually thought I was gonna do just like get it out my system. I thought it was gonna be a one-time thing, and then I was just gonna go back to New Orleans. And so I mean, I had such a great experience. I was like, I want to keep doing it. And then I found out real quick that this is not how it goes. So my second assignment was in Phoenix, Arizona. That was my second assignment. And my mom, her hospital wasn't NYP. She was at a hospital. I don't care. I'll say their name in Brooklyn called Brookdale, and they have a horrible reputation. It's like
Yes.
terrible. She said, so I was telling her all about our iPhones and the doctor. She was like, where are you at? That's not her. Like at Brookdale at the time, she was like, I'm literally having to fight with nurses and CNAs about like glucometers. They had nothing, like not even the actual glucometer, like the strips. Like they would literally count how many, they had no resources, no money. And she was like, yeah. So
She must have been like, why did you drag me over here?
because when I was telling my mom about my New York experience, I was like, outside of the tragedy, it's great. And so I didn't sell her a dream. It was my reality. But she was like, girl, this is not, this is terrible.
Okay, so how was Phoenix, Arizona?
I loved it. I didn't love it as much as NYP, but Phoenix, Arizona, I think I loved it more so for the city. That's not really a city. This was in 2018. I feel like now it's starting to get popular. I see Phoenix or Arizona, Scottsdale on my timeline a lot. But in 2018, it wasn't something that I was like, ooh, Phoenix, Arizona. And so I didn't have high expectations going into that assignment, but I loved it as far as like the city. Now, I did go up on my hours for that second assignment. I was doing 60 hours. My contract was 60 hours for 7,200. So I was making like 7K a week on 60 hours. And my mom was like, oh, I'll come to she was hating on her New York experience, but she was like, I'll do another one. So we did that assignment together. We were placed at the same hospital system, but not the exact same facility. Yeah. But it was nice because we got an Airbnb together. It was like a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. My mom was cooking for me. It was great. So everything else was great, but that assignment is when I knew like I'm a soft life nurse type of girl. I cannot do 60 hours. Like I just cannot. And so if I didn't have my mom on that assignment, I would have been late to a lot of shifts because she would be like, get up, you have to get up. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a kid again. I can't do 60 hours. So.
It's so funny. You're an adult and you still have your mom waking you up for work.
My mom was still waking me up for work.
That is so funny. So you were working in what type of ICU there?
That one I was in the MICU. I was float pool, so I would do some neuro, but my like home was MICU. It was, man, I don't know if it was that time or maybe that area. A lot of those patients were like psych patients. I was like, what? Like a lot of them were like, they came in with all types of psych stuff, not even neuro, like psych. And then we got a lot of like alcoholics in Phoenix. I was like, I don't know if, and I was also there like prime time heat. Like that assignment started in July. So it was like 120 degrees, the desert. So all the patients were like, I just remember like of all 13 assignments, that was like the most crazy patients. Like it was always screaming and restraints and oh my, alcoholism and withdrawals and oh my God, it was crazy.
That sounds like the ER I work in now.
He's like, that sounds like my life.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. So did you end up staying in Phoenix or did you end up going somewhere else after that contract was over?
So I did Phoenix for 8 weeks and I moved. So I was literally on the run. So when I tell people I've done 13 assignments in about 2 years, they're like, how? I was literally on to the next. Like I would literally end an assignment on a Friday and then be in Texas Monday, like literally no breaks. And I was doing a lot of 8-week assignments and some like 13 weeks. So after Phoenix, I went to San Antonio, Texas. That was my third assignment. And then after San Antonio, I went to Atlanta, and then I went to Iowa. I think that was my most weird assignment, Iowa. I was like, what am I doing here? It was like December of 2020. It was like probably like 5 degrees, and I'm a Florida girl. First of all, I'm African,
Yeah.
so I don't do cold or snow. And then I'm a Southern girl, and they were paying like 6K a week, and I was at that point, Jason. I was just going wherever they were paying. Honestly, like
Yeah.
I was wherever had the rate. I almost took an assignment in North Dakota. I was like, at this point, I don't care, like wherever. And so I actually canceled my Iowa assignment. That's when I knew like money really isn't everything, because I was making 6K a week, but it was December 2020. I didn't want to be away from my family, and that part of the US, and I guess I should have knew, but that part of the US is not colored people friendly, to say the least. So it was like my first time seeing it very like it was so obvious.
They were very direct with it too, right?
Very direct with it, right? I feel like, racism is everywhere and you experience it subtly, but that was very like, wow. Like I had to fly into an airport in Nebraska. It was Omaha, Nebraska. And it was about like an hour away I was working at a hospital in Sioux Falls, Iowa. And so Omaha was only like an hour and a half away. And when I landed in Omaha, Nebraska, and I know that's kind of a big city, I'm not even exaggerating. Like when I landed, I was literally, I swear, I didn't see anybody who looked like me, like nothing. And it was just like, I didn't even feel like I was in the US. I was like, what? And I, was getting stares. It was so weird. It was super, super weird. And I remember everyone, like I stuck out like a sore thumb, and it was just like, wow, there are really states and cities where we're not there. And I'm not just talking about Black people. Like I didn't see anybody who had a drop of color. And I was just like, oh God. And I remember praying, because I had to order an Uber. It was going to be an hour and a half ride to Iowa. And I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't get like a crazy. And so long story short, my Uber he was Black, he was African American. And I was like, you live here? Like, how is it living here? He was like, he did say like, it's a lot of racism, but he likes like the quietness and blah, blah, blah. And I really experienced a lot of racism on that assignment, like with the nurses. They were literally going out their way, not just me, because, at that time, everyone was travel nursing. So, there were some colored nurses that were coming in from other states, and it was always something. It was always something with the staff nurses, even the travelers who didn't look like us, multiple instances where they were literally like doing stuff, manipulating like drips in the ICU, like evil stuff, manipulating stuff to make you look crazy, to make you like get fired, lose your license. And so that was the first contract I canceled. I canceled my Iowa travel nurse assignment.
Man, that's hard. Like, I mean, when I came to California from New York, for me, it was personally an eye opener, because I imagined California to be very progressive, but there's like lots of pockets of extreme right wingers here in California, even in like the progressive cities, within the progressive cities, like, because I'm more like of an in the middle type of person. I used to be progressive, but I realized like I just don't want to be extreme in either side, on either side. So I'm just like in the middle. And here though, I've noticed there's like extreme to the right, a lot of extreme to the right. And it seems like people, when you share a different political opinion to someone else, they don't associate themselves with you anymore. They don't like you. And I didn't feel that when I was in New York, because in New York, it's a pretty progressive city, right? New York City. But when you have a coworker who shares a different political opinion than you guys just agree to disagree and you have conversations about it. I don't feel that here. So it's much harder to like socialize with someone who doesn't share the same political opinions as you do, or ideology.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. And I think that like we're all human. We all have different opinions. I'm just like you. Like I want to be somewhere in the middle. I believe in respecting each other. Like if you let's say even religion or political, like I love everybody for who they
Yeah.
are because people have had to accept me for who I am. And so I'm a very agree to disagree type of person. And it's so crazy to me that so many people aren't. Like it'll literally be a deal breaker for the friendship. I'm just like, wow, that is
Yeah.
crazy.
And I worked in a hospital here. It's called Sutter Roseville. It's
Oh, I know
like
about better.
okay, so it's like a few minutes, 20 minutes from Sacramento. And that was the first hospital experience that I had in California. And it was, for me, it was terrifying already to come from New York City to California because I didn't know what I was expecting. But when I started working there, it was me and one other nurse that were the only minorities in the entire department. But I
Wow.
will say this, thankfully, my coworkers were awesome. That I will say, we all got along really well together. And with my coworkers, I did not experience racism, but with
Right.
the patients, I did. Like every
Mhm.
now and then, I would get a patient that would call me boy or that would yell like the N word. Yeah, so that happened every now and then. But me, I'm like, the words never like really hurt me. I'm not that type of
Mhm.
person. So regardless of what people say to me, it just goes in one ear and out the other. And I'm like overly nice to you because I know that will irk you even more if you're being mean towards me or, racist towards me in any way. Like that's how I just get past it. But yeah,
I
I
love
ended up
it.
leaving that hospital and I'm in Sacramento now. And it's extremely diverse where I work now. We have Black, Indian,
I
Asians of
love
all
that.
kinds. Yeah, it's very diverse.
I love it. I love working with a diverse group of people. And it's actually very sad that I feel like as healthcare workers, especially minorities, we've gotten to the point where we've heard the N word and so many other racial slurs so often that now we just brush it off. But
Yeah.
it's a problem. It's really, really
Yeah.
bad. I've been called the N word multiple times, and it's not okay. And sometimes, the especially I'm neuro, they'll be like, "Oh, he's not there his right mind." I'm like, yes, he is. He knows, like, you know exactly what you mean. Like, you might not be neurologically who you are, but that's inside. That's who you are. That's who you were
That's
before you were sick. And it's
mhm.
it's so bad. It's so bad the type of abuse, emotional abuse that healthcare workers go through. Not just nurses, right? So many CNAs are insulted by patients. So many nurses, whether it's racial or whatever. And it's like there has to be something that holds these patients accountable. I feel like whenever a patient is getting admitted, they need to watch a course or something about respect because it's crazy. It's like I'm here to help you. I'm here to serve you. I'm not here for you to call me the N word. I'm not here for you to, I'll tell people I'm African and then they'll like crack little jokes or, did you have a pet this? Did you have a pet lion? And it's just like, I want to fire you. Like I don't want
Mhm.
you as a patient. And so I feel like there needs to be a little bit more, like a little bit more training for patients. They need to understand that there has to be a mutual respect, right? Like, yeah, you're not at work, but these people are here to help you. You should treat them with respect. And it makes me sad when I hear, people who've encountered racism at the bedside and it's become so normal. It's like, oh, whatever. And it's like, no, it's not whatever. It's crazy. It's crazy the stuff we go through. I think patients need to have a little bit more accountability. I don't know who's gonna make that happen. That sounds like a, higher up thing, but there needs to be more accountability for patients. And it's very close to me because I was able to quit my full-time job as a nurse last year. So November 1st is going to be my 1 year anniversary of retiring from full-time nursing. Like I haven't swiped a badge in a year. And what did it for me is that I literally clocked in my shift as a nurse and I left the shift as a patient. I was physically assaulted on it was at a Kaiser hospital. I'm not gonna say the specifics. It was at a Kaiser hospital, me as a night shift nurse trying to bathe my patient. So, some patients you can tell nobody's giving him a bath. in 2 days. I'm trying to be super nurse. I'm trying to be good to you. Granted, it's neuro. Like, I know who I'm dealing with my type of specialty. I grabbed the CNA. Hey, let's turn him. He wasn't 4-point restraints, to be fair. We didn't let him free. We just loosened it just so we can get him to turn so we can clean his back. And he literally went crazy on me. And I think outside of the patient, because yeah, he was sick and you can say whatever, it was like the lack of support that the hospital gave. It was kind of like, I was on workers' comp. So, they did pay for 2 weeks while I was healing. It was a full thing. Like, I had to see multiple doctors. I was on bed rest. I was hemorrhaging. Like, it wasn't a casual situation. And so, yeah, it's like they threw the workers' comp at me. Okay, here's 2 weeks, whatever. And it was still like during my healing process, it was still very much like, are you coming next week? Or it wasn't like concern. It was just kind of like, we need to fill up staff. And that's when I really realized, like, I need to get some type of passive income because, I don't know if people say healthcare has changed. Like, it used to be better. Like, my mom even says, like, it didn't used to be this bad. But it's like, I really realized as a nurse, you're just another person on payroll. Like, they don't really care. That was the most, up until now, like at 26 years old, that was the most traumatic experience of my entire life. When I was injured, I was in the ED, I was admitted, I had to be on medications, I had to see 100 doctors. I was hemorrhaging. You would have thought I was having a miscarriage. For the first time in my life at 25, I was like, am I able to even have kids later? And so just the lack of like respect and support, it really turned me off about healthcare. And, I'm not here to bash nursing. I love being a nurse. I might pop in for a PRN shift here and there, but I can't. Like, I really can't. It's not the same. The patients don't respect you. The hospital system, the CEOs, half the time your charge nurse isn't even, you're just there. You're just a number. And so I always encourage people, it doesn't matter how much you love your job. You should have something. I feel like everyone is not meant to be entrepreneur, but I feel like everyone should do something entrepreneurial to where if they did cancel your contract tomorrow, if they did say, oh, the census is low, you have something else. You have something else. Even if I'm not saying that something else needs to be a six-figure business, but you have something else that you can tap into that can generate you income. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your racial experiences. I think it's very, very serious. And I think it's something that patients need to be held to a higher level of accountability for how they treat not just nurses, everyone in healthcare.
I like what you said, though, because I tell this to everybody that at the end of the day, as long as you're an employee, you're nothing but a number to your employer. Like, because I've been laid off twice. So I know what it feels like when you think your employer doesn't care about you, because the reality of the matter is they don't. They really don't.
They don't.
They just care about their bottom line. And as long as the hospital system, or not even the hospital system, like I worked corporate before I got into nursing. And as long as their business is earning money, that's what matters. And if you are responsible for them losing money, or in your case, they had to give you workers' comp, then they might not need you any longer because you're just a liability at that point, right?
Absolutely.
So that's exactly why I've always been like very adamant about like starting my own business or getting into some kind of side hustle to protect me from like losing my job again. Because if I ever get laid off again, I want to have at least some sort of backup that will provide me a decent amount of income so that I can use that as a harness to protect me in the case that I don't have like regular W-2 income coming in.
I love it. It's so important. It's so important. And I think so many nurses, and I speak about nurses because I'm a nurse, but this really applies to anybody, especially in the healthcare system. We're so comfortable, especially as a travel nurse. It's like, you can go make 100K. You know that you can make 70K. And, the con about entrepreneurship is that it's not stable. So I think that's what turns a lot of people off from starting a business. It's like they like that security. But at the end of the day, like, your job is not even secure, honestly. Like, I know everyone says job security is huge with nursing, and I used to say that too. But it's like, no job is secure. I don't care if you're even in them, because people always say, oh, in medical field, it's secure because people are always sick. Yes
Yeah.
and no. You can listen outside of, workers' comp or something like a patient hitting you or something like one med error, you can get sued. I know people in real life who cannot practice as a nurse because a patient sued them. They made one med error. And at this point, if you're a nurse, you've made a med error. Like you've big or small, new grad or OG, you've made a med error. And it's like you can have that one patient who's really going to sue you, right? You can have that one job who's really going to fire you. And so, yeah, as a nurse, you can get a job anywhere, but that license, it could be here today, gone tomorrow. You can literally lose it in one instance. I never thought at 25 I was going to be on workers comp. And so I always like to tell people like it's not even optional that you find something else to generate you income. So what I do on this, well, it's actually not even on the side yet. Now it's like my full-time thing. I own my own life insurance agency and company. I have about 95 people that are on my team that I literally train, help make sales, the whole nine. I also do stuff with nurse coaching. I have my mentees. I have a nurse community. And so I always tell people, your route might not look like, a podcast. It might not look like YouTube. It might not look like life insurance. It might not look like options trading. But you do need to have something. You need to have something to where, like you said, it's like a harness. It's like a shield, if something, even if it's not even that deep, maybe the census is low, you can go, harder in this other venture. So I'm very huge on passive income. I love to see all the things that you're doing. And I think it's starting to get a little bit more normalized. Nurses, like you're more than a nurse. You have more to offer the world than just, your patient, giving them meds and helping them. You can contribute to the world on a bigger scale outside of just in the hospital.
I agree. So how did you stumble upon the business that you have now?
You know what? It was actually an accident. So my first, like literally it was an accident. My first like shot at entrepreneurship was very much unplanned. So, and I know like I feel like this is gonna get a little controversial. So I did a strike nurse assignment. This was April of 2022. And I know so many nurses are against strike nursing, so many nurses are for strike nursing. I support nurses who want to go on strike. I feel like most nurses who take a strike assignment, they actually support the nurses who are striking. However, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like they're going to pay you 10K for 3 days, for 4 days. At the end of the day, like I always tell people I'm the honest nurse. I'm not for everybody, but I'm going to keep it real with you, nurse. So many nurses do strike. So many nurse influencers, I see them on strikes. They're in my strike community, but they don't want to speak on it because they don't want to lose followers and all that. I don't care about followers. And so I did my very first strike. This was April of 2022. I made $30,000 in 10 days. And
Oh my
I got pay stubs, like all $30,000 on a 10-day strike.
Oh my
It was a
gosh.
Stanford strike. I think
Mm.
the week before was Sutter was on strike. So that was my first strike. I didn't even know strike nursing was, I guess I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know like strikes really happen like every month or every potential strikes happen like every month or every other month. And so, nobody talks about strike nursing. It's taboo. And so I went on Instagram Live. Keep in mind, I didn't even have 10K followers. I just went on Instagram Live after the strike because you don't want to post while you're on the strike. There's so many, you already got haters, but now the haters know where you're at. It could get dangerous. And so I was like, I disappeared from Instagram for 2 weeks. So I think people were wondering, like, where are you? Because I post on my stories kind of like every day, not about nursing, just about normal life. So when I popped up, I don't know if it's the algorithm. When you go away for a while and you pop up, like you get a lot of views. And so I posted on my story, my pay stub. Like I made like 30K in 10 days. I had the start date, the end date. They could see it clear as day that I made 30K in 10 days. My strike contract, granted that I'm ICU, my strike contract was 13.6K for 60 hours. So first week was 13.6K for 60 hours, no COVID. And then the strike went into round two. So it ended up ending on like a Monday or a Tuesday, but with strike nursing, those hours are guaranteed. So as long as you're on week two, you're still guaranteed that 13.6K if they want to call it off on a Monday. So now I'm up 26K, 27K. They paid us to do modules, orientation, blah, blah, blah. So I posted my pay stub on my story. And then, oh my God, this is when I knew like, oh, wow, like it really, like nobody talks about strike nursing. Or, they're talking about how they're in support of it, but nobody really talks about like, the money you can make working a strike. And so many people were asking me, do you do coaching calls? I was like, I'm a nurse at this point. I'm still a nurse. Once a nurse, always a nurse. But I'm like, coaching calls? I don't know nothing about coaching calls. Like, what? And so I was like, I don't do any of that, but I'll go live. That was probably like my second time in life going live on Instagram. I wasn't an influencer at all. And so I went on Instagram Live. Man, Jason, I had so many people on my live. I was like, wow. And they were just asking me questions like, how was it? At the time, I didn't disclose the hospital, but now, especially now that I'm retired, I don't care. And so I was like, it was this hospital. I was in I was in North California. They were like, oh my God, how did you make so many people had questions. So I was on live for about 40 minutes and then I got off of live. My DMs, people at that point had sent my page to other people. Now it's like they're calling me the strike queen. I had only done one strike at that time. And so people were like just begging me for stuff. Do you have a course? Do you have an ebook? Do you do coaching calls? And I was like, so the guy I was with at the time, he's an entrepreneur. He was like, you got to do like coaching calls. Like you got to do something. And so my very first digital product was coaching calls about strike nursing. And Jason, when I tell you, I was like, literally, I was doing like 7-8 calls a day. Like I was talking a lot. Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't even have 10K followers. That's why I always tell people, if you have that thing, like the people will come. If you have the idea, you have not even the idea, because all a business is that you're solving a problem. And so the problem was a lot of nurses didn't know about strike nursing. And so me solving it, I was doing 7-8 calls a day. And it was exciting in the beginning. And then it's like, oh, wow, it's a lot of talking, too much talking. So I recorded a strike nurse course. And then people would do the call, do the course, but they were like, what about the strike next month? What if there's a strike in June? At this time it's April. And so I created a community, and that's how like my business started. Like on the nursing side, it was unintentional. I didn't plan to like start a business. I was just providing solutions to, what people wanted to know. And so now I have 3 nurse communities, one that is closed, and then I have 2 that are open. We have over 560 nurses combined. One of the communities called Highest Paid Nurse. It started off as just strike nursing, but in order to do a strike, like a strike is not a travel assignment. Like you need to be experienced. You don't get a preceptor. There's no orientation. Whoever would have trained you is outside protesting. So you don't get training. And so it's not like new nurse friendly. It's not even like rookie nurse friendly. I always tell people at minimum 2 years is 2 like solid years. And you're going to need that solid, and ideally you want to have some travel nurse experience before you do a strike, because you don't get a preceptor. It's not like, oh, day one, you follow this person around. Day one, you are on the unit, you're ready to go. And so Highest Paid Nurse, that community, it started off as just strike nursing, but then so many people, I've done 13 assignments, different recruiters. I am the plug when it comes to travel nursing. So in Highest Paid Nurse community, there's a tab for strike nursing. So all the girlies and all the nurses who want to do strikes, they have like literally daily updates. This strike is canceled. This strike is still happening. And then we have another category within Highest Paid Nurses for travel assignments. So you can't do strikes yet, or maybe you're against strikes. That's cool. I love everybody. But you want to do travel nurse assignments, we have a place for you. And then we also have a place within that same community for PRN nursing. People don't know that there are PRN agencies that will literally pay you $1,200 a shift, $1,500 a shift, $900 a shift, depending on your location. I'm not going to sit up here and say, you're going to be in Florida making, $1,000 a shift, but depending on your location, there are agencies, the same way that there are agencies for strikes, there are agencies for travel. There are also agencies for PRN. And so, for nurses who don't want to do the 13-week thing anymore, they don't want to be up and down the country, right in your city, right locally, you can create a profile with an agency, and literally on the app, you can pick your shift. So we have a category for PRN nursing. And then we have another category for pretty much like nurse entrepreneurs. So I don't do anything with IV hydration. That's not my thing. But a lot of like popular nurse influencers, they're actually a part of my community. So they'll like go in and teach a class on med spas and blah, blah, blah. So it's like the ultimate home for all things nurses. It's kind of like the happy nurse community. And then I have another community, which is kind of the burnt out nurse community. They hate it here. They've been there, done that. They don't want to do anything. They don't even want to touch a strike. They are done. And that community, we really just help nurses build out their passive income stream, whether that's a digital product, whether that's starting a business, whether that's just education. You just want to know about business credit, business funding, business grant. You want to do options trading. You want to do life insurance. You want to tap into real estate. And so that community is called Passive Income Community. It's not just me. Like I feel like highest paid nurse is kind of like my expertise and my connections. But with Passive Income Nurse Community, I bring in my millionaire, multimillionaire mentors. It's kind of like I paid 15K, I paid 30K for their mentorship so that you don't have to. And so what they do is they come into the community and then they educate nurses about their thing. One of my first mentor, his name is Dion Coopwood. He is the king of all things credit. And so now nurses are starting businesses. Nurses have EIN, they have LLCs, they have S corps, they're getting funded. Like so many things. A lot of nurses want to do Airbnb, but they never had the capital. And so now that they're starting businesses, they have access to all those things. So really just like normalizing whatever stage of nursing that you're in. If I don't know it, I know somebody who knows it and they're going to teach you. So, yeah.
Okay. So 2 things. Is this community on Facebook, Discord? Where is it located actually?
This community is on Telegram, and I'm probably going to move it from Telegram, but it is on an app called Telegram. It's set up kind of like a WhatsApp or like a group me, but better. It's like,
Gotcha.
It's like, I feel like WhatsApp is set up to where it's like one big group chat.
Yeah.
I like Telegram because we can all be in one community, but they're like different tabs. So like if you don't care about strikes, you can just click on the travel nurse tab and then see like, 4K a week or 5K a week. So yeah, I'm on Telegram right now.
Awesome. And then secondly, how did you find your mentor?
That's a great question. So my very first, and I say he's my first, I technically have another mentor. His name is Serge, but Serge was free. I didn't even know people like charge for mentorship until, I started getting into the entrepreneurship space and I was like, wow, my first mentor, unofficial first mentor was free. But my first paid mentor, which at this point, he's like everything to me, like he's been a very big help in my year. I was introduced to him through a mutual friend. She was in another mentorship and they were in that mentorship together. And so I initially thought that, I'm going to, be in your mentor stuff. And she was like, save your money. Like maybe you should, get in this guy's mentorship. So we got on a Zoom call and he was pretty much explaining to me what it would entail. He was asking me, what am I trying to do? Because he doesn't mentor everyone. So he wanted to make sure that it would be a fit because nursing is so niche. He does credit. He's a credit guy and he's also a business mentor. So he is used to like helping all niches build out their business. But one thing I liked about him is that he was very intentional. He was like, listen, I could just sit up here and say, yeah, I'll take you, but I want to make sure I can actually help you. So I hired him in March. It was supposed to be an 8-week mentorship, but at this point we are in for a lifetime. So mentorship has been a game changer for my year for sure.
So are you paying him is it like a one-time fee now or is it like a recurring fee?
That's a great question. So his price, I think it's higher now. So, don't be mad at me if you go to him and it's like 10K more. But as of March 2023, his price was $15,000 for 8 weeks. Okay. And I was like, I've never in my life spent $15,000 on like a person. Like what? And so for me, that was very scary. And mentorship is not a thing in nursing. Like I feel like the closest thing to a mentor in nursing is your preceptor. If you think about it, your preceptor is really your mentor for those 8 weeks or 12 weeks, however long your orientation is, because they're literally teaching you the ropes. They know that nursing school did not do its due diligence. Clinicals did not do its due diligence. And so the concept of mentorship actually shouldn't be new to people. Like your preceptor is your mentor. They are assigned to you, and their job is to get you from week 1 to week 8, however long it is, to get you from rookie to, I mean, you're still going to be a rookie when you're leaving them, but like way better off. Just think about your first preceptor. Week 1, you were scared to do your IB. And then by the time it's time to graduate, you're like, stop coming with me everywhere. I got it. So that's kind of the same concept as a mentor, especially when you're entering something new like business. For me, I didn't listen, when I was doing those coaching calls, I was accepting payments on freaking Zelle and Cash App. I didn't know anything about payment. I didn't know anything. I was just out here, we don't know anything about business. And so I knew like I needed a website, I needed a funnel, I needed to structure my business. I don't know what I don't even know at this point, I didn't know what EIN stood for. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like if I'm trying to run an actual business, I need help. And so, yeah, his price was $15,000 for 8 weeks. I haven't paid him since. After the 8 weeks, I thought I was going to get kicked out. And I mean, we did build a bond. We're super close, and he's just kind of kept me around. So I love that for him.
So how does he guide you through every step? Does he tell you what to do and then you have to go out and do it? Or is he actually like following along and saying, okay, this is the website that you need to go on. This is how you need to like build the website. Did he do all
Yes. Yeah, he does all of that. So every single week we have a mentorship call. At that time, it was probably like me and like 7 others. Now, when I log into his calls, I'm like, wow, you've gotten popular. Because I was his first like group of mentees. So yeah, you get weekly calls. I'm super close with him now, so I can just call and text him as I need. I actually was in Atlanta 2 days ago and I was just with him. So he's super, super hands-on. He knows nothing about nursing, but now he's an expert. He knows all things about strike nursing, travel nursing. Sometimes when he's explaining my business, I'm like, wow, I'm proud of you. He'll like come in and sit in on my classes. And he's used to nurses, he's in my community a lot, helping them fix their credit. And so, yeah, he's great. He's super, 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 super hands-on. And then I got a second mentor this year. His name is Damon Dillard. He's very big on sales, and he's very big on mindset, because anyone can really start a business, but what people don't realize about business, especially as nurses or any 9-to-5er, it involves sales. Like you have to sell, like whether you're selling consciously or unconsciously, you have to pitch, you have to bring up what you have going on. And that was so weird for me. Jason, I didn't know how to like tell somebody, oh, I have a community. It was so weird. Like, as a nurse, our clients are already there. I didn't have to market to get you in the ICU. You're already here. You know what I mean? And so for me, I knew I needed help like with sales. And as a nurse, you don't sell, like take the medication, don't take the medication. I get paid by the hour. And so now when you're in business, it does matter if they take the medication or not. And so medication for, and just use that as an example. And so my second mentor, he's very big with sales in a natural way. And then he's very big on mindset. So every single Monday at 8 p.m., he has mindset mastery calls, and people don't realize mindset is everything. Mindset is everything. Mindset is the reason you start something and you stop it. Mindset is a reason that you're not going as hard as you need to. Mindset is a reason why you feel like Jason is special or Lois is special. Mindset is a reason why you feel like your favorite nurse entrepreneur is special. Like it starts right here. Once you realize that these people that you love and admire, they're not even these millionaires that are my mentors, and I admire them. But now they've gotten like mentally, they're gonna sound horrible. They're not that special. It's like I still admire them. They're great, but it's like, oh, I can do it. Like, and I feel like I had a shift in my mindset this year. I used to look at people and be like, oh my God, like I could never do that. That's great for them, but I couldn't do that. And it's like, yeah, you can. I don't care if you're an introvert. I don't care if